When I received an envelope in the mail, it looked strange because it didn't have the sender's address. It has 2 stamps in the top right corner. The address is handwritten, so I thought it could be a buddy from back in the days of the military trying to reach me. I opened the letter and it addressed me as Mr. Unknown, as using unknown in place of my name. The following is the content of the letter. Dear Mr. Unknown, I am sending you this anonymous letter to inform you that your wife has been having love contact with Mr. Boss, a man he is having an affair with multiples. I must have read the letter at least 5 times. It appears that the author wanted to remain anonymous and clearly wanted me to know that my wife is having an affair with her supervisor. And the fact that the letter says multiple women must mean that the supervisor is having an affair with multiple women. I saw her supervisor once when I was dropping my wife off at work. He is a tall man, possibly 6'4" or 6'5", bald below average in looks and out of shape, resembling a fat golem. I know my wife's type, and he wasn't. It will sound arrogant, but I need to set the stage by being in the military for obvious reasons. I was lean and focused on endurance. About 6 months after getting out, I decided I was tired of being tired during my workouts. So I started lifting weights. Like I said, it sounds arrogant, but I've always been above average looking, but at 5 or 9, I'm automatically out of the dome. Once I changed my physique though, I noticed my social status increased dramatically. Women would actually check me out on the fly and stare at one of their nasty friends. Sally solicited me once. I'm pretty sure my wife never noticed any of this because she's the jealous type and never said anything. I can tell you as a religious man, I never took advantage of any new opportunities in any way. I didn't rub it in my wife's face to boost my ego. I didn't flirt with other women, certainly not ducks. It was just a nice feeling, and I'm sure anyone who's attractive can attest to my wife. They didn't really seem to care though and only said if your neck disappears, you need to. It was kind of a disappointing response, but I felt like that meant she loved me, for me and not the shape of my body. The closeness never changed after I started lifting weights, which was fine because it was good. So back to the letter. I took this letter with a grain of salt, especially since there isn't any obvious evidence. I would confront my wife to clear the air. But that would be no good, because if she denies it, then what? I have no evidence. And if there was indeed an affair and I confronted her with no evidence, it would go underground. Suspicion alone is not enough to speak. Once spoken out, the suspicion would cause her to think that I don't trust her. Then what if I'm mistaken? Evidence is necessary. Let me give a little background on us. I'm 35. My wife is 33. We met in college and got married, right? I also joined the military. We had 3 kids, 1 boy 9 years old and 2 girls 7 and 5 years old. My wife stayed at home. Mom is raising our 3 kids. I'm competent. She was faithful the whole time I was in the military. We had a good group of friends that she was able to rely on. Then, when I was deployed, and contrary to the stereotype of women cheating men during deployments, it's really hard not to get caught. It does happen. And long story short, I was never home during my last posting, and it was only going to get worse as I continued to get promoted. So I decided to get out. After 10 years of service, I decided to get that's typically the crap war, get off the pot moment in the military, as it doesn't make financial sense to get out after that orders, or at least 3 years in retirement is 20 years. So I decided to start over at the bottom of corporate America in order to be a great father because I never spent enough time with my kids. I never changed a diaper concerning getting out of the military. My wife was not happy about it either. Another long story short, she doesn't handle uncertainty well and was comfortable in her life. We built together in the military, which is odd, seeing as she always complained that I was gone too much. Now that I am no longer in the military, she gave me a laundry list of demands about where it would be, how much I needed to make, etc., all to make her comfortable. And she and my kids are secure. And she cried a lot. Everyone knows you must go where the jobs are. But I gave it my best. And you wouldn't believe how blessed we were in real life. I checked all the boxes. I got a job in the correct state within driving distance of my parents because she loves them. They're perfect. Checked. Resulting in what military personnel would call a crap ton. 6 figures were checked. Public schools are the best in the metropolitan area. I double-checked below each away fees. Everyone's. And did I mention that she was constantly complaining about not being able to start her career because we moved too much in the military, which is true. She said she wanted to be able to use her degree. She majored in logistics and supply chain management. She started looking for a job, and within 3 months she got her dream job. If you want to call it, she got a job at a distribution center. All her work colleagues were women, and they all reported to a male supervisor, the bald guy that I mentioned earlier. Her job doesn't pay much, but she always wanted to do it. It's her first and only job since graduating from college, and I was behind her 100% like I am for everything she does, which is sensitive. Since I received this letter, I have been trying to gather evidence to confirm whether the letter is legit. I mean, if the person wanted to expose the boss, why didn't they report to HR? Why report it to me? Nevertheless, I kept my eyes on my wife. I knew my wife's cell phone password, so I went through her phone and looked through her messages. I found text messages with her boss, but their conversation had nothing unusual. In fact, they didn't text me. That letter bothered me for almost a week, and I couldn't find any evidence that my wife was being unfaithful. She's been at her job now for 5 months, and the only thing that is different is that my libido is down. She has been turning down love for the past 2 months now, but I can't accuse my wife of cheating because she is turning down closeness. Moreover, she always gives excuses. I feel like my job is becoming more stressful, and I am. After searching for evidence for 2 weeks, I couldn't find anything. However, my antenna was always up for clues. I kept wondering who it was that sent me the letter. I'm guessing it's a joke. I almost told my wife about it like a joke one evening, but I decided I was almost close to closing that weird chapter, lowering my antenna, and just accepting that I wouldn't be getting as much closeness as I used to. But one night, my wife was talking about her work, and she mentioned how her female co-workers were jealous of the attention she was getting from her boss. She said they're jealous because she got the best quarterly reviews, and that their supervisor recognized her as the employee of the month 3 times in a row, even though she hasn't been there that long. She was really happy about the recognition. At first, I was happy for her because she hadn't had a real job before and wouldn't know what that felt like. But that letter keeps coming back to me for some reason. Her statement piqued my curiosity. The question that went through my head was, could it be that one of the girls she works with is so jealous? They sent me that letter. And most importantly, why are they so jealous of her recognition? I know women are normally jealous of each other, but this seemed a little over the top. My antenna was back up again. I wanted to lay this to rest, so I considered hiring a private investigator to follow my wife. At the last minute, I changed my mind because I still didn't want to waste money on a private investigator. I keep thinking that if I was wrong, then I would have wasted all this money. I still didn't have any strong proof of any reasonable cause. No text messages, just a letter. Her drop index drying and her newfound excitement at her job all seemed normal. So I decided to purchase an online GPS tracker to install in her car and track any suspicious locations she visits. The GPS tracker that I bought was the one that easily snaps into the OBD2, ported under the steering column. I was nervous that she would find it because it's so visible, but my wife is not that tech savvy, so I just gambled on that she wouldn't notice. Furthermore, I usually fix both of the family's cars, so I could easily persuade her. I probably wouldn't recommend this kind of GPS for any clandestine operation like what I'm about to carry out. It was Friday, so I was excited to see what the GPS would show during lunchtime. I noticed that her car was parked in a location that I wasn't familiar with. It wasn't her work or the grocery store or my kids' school. It was on the other side of town where we don't normally visit. So I googled the place and came to find out it was. I immediately asked for permission for my boss to leave work. I drove toward the GPS location. My job was 35 miles from there, about 25 miles with 10 miles left to get there. I noticed that the GPS signal was leading to the location. I was tracking the GPS signal with the app installed on my phone. I drove faster, but I could see the GPS signal was moving back towards her work. Her car must have been in that location for about 2-3 hours, and I barely missed it. I was so disappointed. I got out of my car and looked around the area. I wasn't sure if the car was parked at the Best Western parking lot or at the restaurant nearby. Another thought that ran through my mind was that she may have been out to eat with her co-worker because the restaurant and hotel were next to each other. But why would she travel this far for a restaurant? There must be hundreds of restaurants between her work and here. It's not like she is a big fan of Golden Corral and will travel 27 miles. I went home that day with lots of questions and no answers. My wife noticed that something was bothering me when I got home, but I lied to her that I had had a rough day at work. I tried so hard not to confront my wife, but I still felt like I didn't have enough evidence to confront her. So I decided that it's time to bring in a private investigator because I can't keep checking my phone and leaving work to try to track her down and catch her. I spoke with a private investigator on Saturday. The private investigator costs $1.25 an hour. I didn't really think he was a legit private investigator, just a guy with a really good camera phone. I found him on Craigslist. I agreed to pay him to tell my wife during lunch hours that the private investigator wasn't that expensive since he only works during lunch. The private investigator also installs the GPS tracker app on his phone, so he sees what I'm seeing. I told the private investigator about the Best Western Golden Corral incident and showed him the location. Monday through Thursday was a routine in New Orleans. Then on Friday, the private investigator notified me that there was some movement. He texts me that my wife is driving toward the location of the Best Western, and he was telling her I opened the app to confirm what he was saying since he knew where she was heading. He went ahead of her. He got there before her and parked his car. When my wife arrived, she arrived alone and walked into the hotel. The private investigator took some pictures of her walking into the hotel. He then followed behind her. The private investigator is also aware of her boss because I told him who to watch out for, so he knew what her boss looked like and what car he drove. The private investigator. I am sitting in the lobby of the hotel and secretly video recording my wife going into the elevator. He managed to join her in the elevator, which he probably shouldn't have done because it could have blown his cover if she saw him multiple times and recognized him. But I guess you get what you pay for. The private investigator noticed that she came off the elevator on the 3rd floor and video recorded everything. The private investigator didn't follow her out of the elevator on the 3rd floor. He returned to the lobby and sat there for about 3 hours. He saw his boss getting off the elevator, went to the counter, checked out of the hotel, and headed to his car. He recorded the whole thing. Then 10 minutes later, my wife came out of the elevator and headed straight to her car. And the private investigator cut this on tape. My suspicion has been confirmed. She is cheating on me with that ball. I have all the evidence I need to confront her. The private investigator sent me all the recordings and pictures to my Dropbox. I compiled it all into one video. I came home early before she did and had my laptop out, and the envelope I mentioned earlier in the. If you ask me how I felt at that moment, I guess I felt relaxed because I had been preparing myself for this moment. When she came home, I called her to the kitchen. My laptop was on the countertop. I had compiled the recordings together into a 30-minute video that shows her arriving at the hotel, getting off the elevator, and her boss coming out of the elevator. Then a few minutes later, she followed behind. I showed her the recording less than 2 minutes into the recording. She knew exactly what it was. She turned to me to apologize, saying, "I can explain." She started crying, saying, "I'm sorry." I shot her and pointed at the screen, and she continued to watch. She continued turning around, trying to explain, trying to get me to stop watching the video. But I got mad and grabbed her by the back of her hair and turned her head toward the laptop, pointing at the laptop and telling her to keep watching 403 as she slowly sobbed and continued to watch. I must have grabbed her hair throughout the entire video as she continued to sob and tremble. I could see by the look on her face that she was terrified of me because she hadn't seen me this angry before. I am not a wife beater. I haven't laid my hand on her before, or have I laid a hand on any other woman in that manner. But I made an exception for today. After we finished watching the video, I forcefully pushed her on the floor and she flew across the other side of the room. I really felt like beating the hell out of her. I screamed at her, telling her 5 months into her job, she's already dumped her boss and God knows who else. She responded by crying that this was the only time she cheated. I inquired as to how long it had been going on, and she said that for 2 months. She said that she didn't care about him. The closeness meant nothing, and she didn't know why she did. I scream at her to start talking, otherwise I will beat the hell out of her. She confesses to everything. She said that she wasn't attracted to him, but since the other girls wanted him, she wanted him as well. It's almost like a competition. I think it has something to do with him being the male boss and the majority female. According to her, he is doing it to other girls too. I couldn't wrap my head around how my beautiful wife was ducking this guy that looks like Gollum, and she was doing so simply because other girls wanted to or were already ducking him. She somehow forgot that she was married. Ducking this fool. Why did she deny her husband love? What kind of world are we living in? It seemed like she was ducking him out of competition more than anything. I was so upset. Words couldn't express how I felt. I felt like my once beautiful wife had been soiled. I immediately lost interest in her that night. I called her 403. I told her that I didn't want to see her again. I kicked her out of the house because I couldn't stand the sight of her, and she went to stay with her. That night was really stressful because I had to feed and put my kids to bed. I don't know where anything is, so I was running around like a chicken with my head cut off. I had to resist calling my wife because my 5-year-old was crying. My wife has always been the stay-at-home mom and is more involved in my kids' lives than I am. I was the breadwinner and she was the homemaker. I thought we made a great team until now. She destroyed everything because she was trying to compete with another girl, forgetting that she was married. Very immature tramp. According to her, the female employees that work for Gollum were throwing themselves at him, even those that are married. There is competition among grown women and married women. What in the world is going on? Grown women behaving like college students. It must be one of these despicable women that sent me that letter. Why would grown women compete to duck an unattractive troll? Man, this guy makes me so sick. Taking advantage of his female employee, turning their workplace into, I want to get a divorce. I want her to suffer for this betrayal. But I have depended on her to keep my house in order. It would definitely take some getting used to. So my wayward wife has been texting and calling me since yesterday, asking for my permission to come home. I didn't get much sleep last night and I have to go to work this morning. My wayward wife knows the location of everything that my kids need, including their medication. My 7-year-old daughter is on some medication. She was allergic to things and very selective. That's how she has always been, so she always needed special attention, which my wayward wife is good at. My 5-year-old daughter is not too easy to take care of either. I took my kids to school and got off work early to pick them up, and at the end of the day it didn't seem that bad. But I was exhausted. Meanwhile, I hadn't responded to my errant wife's texts or phone calls that evening. I called her back and told her that she should come when she came home that night. I was surprised because she came with her older sister. I guess because she was afraid to be alone with me. Her sister lives 90 miles away from us. My wayward wife must have told her about her infidelity and wanted her for support. My sister-in-law married at a young age and is now divorced. She looks almost like my wayward wife. You could mistake them for twins, but she is 2 years older than my wayward wife, and we got along really well. She's concerning matters more respectful than my errant wife. My sister-in-law and I have had a good relationship since we met. My wayward wife is the spoiled one in the family, and her big sister is the one that comes behind her to clean up her mess. I am not in the mood to reconcile or play nice with my wayward wife, but I was glad to see a friendly face, even though I thought she would always be behind her sister. Blood is thicker than I thought. It was nice of her to come and intercede for my wayward wife. I felt like she would know what I was going through because her husband cheated on her as well, which is why she divorced him. My sister-in-law pulled me aside and told me that she wasn't there for my wayward wife, but for the kids. And she knows my wife can be immature. She said she understands if I ask them to leave to give me space to think things through. But for the sake of the kids' well-being, I should allow my wife to come back into the house. We could try an in-house separation and see where things go from there. After a brief conversation, I must admit that my sister-in-law has a way with words, because she manages to calm me down enough to tolerate my wife's presence. I looked at my wife as she sat in the corner. Her face is all red. It is like she has been crying for days with her eyelids all swollen as she tried to avoid my gaze. It gave me some satisfaction that she knew the impact of what her betrayer had done. Immediately my kids came out of their room and welcomed her. That lightened the tense mood in the air and sort of warmed my heart. I really wish she had not done this to me. I wish she would stay faithful by looking at her while she hugs my kids. Almost brought me to tears. I really enjoy seeing her with my kids because she is so good at being a mother, but not so good as a wife. We live in a 3-bedroom apartment, so the wayward wife and her sister shared the guest bedroom while the kids stayed in the 3rd bed. My wayward wife came out of the bedroom after putting my kids to bed and started making dinner while I sat on the living room couch with my sister-in-law, watching as my sister-in-law started speaking to me. I knew what she was doing. I knew she was trying to distract me from my wife's affair or to make everything seem normal. I knew that, but I accepted it deep inside me. I wanted everything to be normal. I wanted things to go back to what they used to be. I was exhausted from being angry and tired, caring for the kids alone while juggling my job without my wayward wife. I needed some distraction, and her sister was a big one. Well, my wayward wife was in the kitchen. My sister-in-law told me she would be living until tomorrow morning, but would stay longer if we needed her. I told her that it was highly likely that I would be getting a divorce because I couldn't look at my wife the same way or trust her anymore. My sister-in-law responded that she understands and didn't try to convince me otherwise. After my wife finished cooking dinner, she served both of us while we watched TV. She never looked me in the eye or said a single word. The next morning, my sister-in-law left and we carried on our normal routine, except that I still wasn't speaking to my wayward wife. My wayward wife didn't seem like she was preparing for work that day, and I didn't bother to ask why that afternoon. I consulted a divorce lawyer to discuss my options. The lawyer said that based on the income my wife was making, I might have to pay alimony and child support. The crazy part is that she was only making $45,000 a year, and for that she ducked a goal. Although it's never okay to doctor your boss, regardless of how much they pay you, especially when you are in a committed relationship. The fact that it was her first time earning money for herself since she graduated college must have contributed to it because it must have boosted her self-esteem. But she obviously took it too. I don't have any problem paying her alimony and child support after all. That was basically all I did when I was in the military, and I made much less back then. So it's not about the money, it was about the principle of it being that she would cheat on me with her first career boss. Then what makes me think she wouldn't cheat on me with the next person? When I came home that night, I spoke to my wife for the first time since D-Day. She had written a letter and wanted to read the letter to me. She said she wanted to get all her thoughts out without being emotional. She read the letter she wrote, and all she said was how sorry she was. She was careful not to mention the golden guy, and simply apologized to me for betraying my trust and acting immature. She said she would like us to be together and she would do anything to fix our marriage. Said something that I wasn't expecting. She said that I could sleep with other women if I wanted to. Now that was a curveball that took me by surprise. This came as a shock to me because my wife is the jealous type, so I called her bluff. I told her that I don't need her permission to sleep with other women because she gave up that option to have an opinion on that. She was just using that to manipulate me so she could make herself feel less guilty if I follow through with. I stopped her right after she said that and told her that I was not interested in sleeping with another woman. I told her that if I was interested in another woman then I wouldn't have married her. She immediately bust out crying after I said that. I told her that she could cry all she wanted, but she still hasn't explained why she deceived me for 2 months. It's not like it was a one-time thing. It's not like it just happened. It was premeditated and deliberate. She planned to go to the hotel. I'm sneaking about to sleep with this disgusting guy, risking a lot, and for what? I told her that we were getting a divorce and I had already made up my mind. I added that she is as attractive as she is. I can't stand sleeping with her or having her next. She kept saying, "Why are you being this cruel to me? I have spoiled my wife. I have treated her like a princess throughout this relationship. I never raised my voice at her. I always pampered her, allowed her to make all the rules in the house, and gave her the key to the household. And she has gotten used to it. I have treated her well and never been mean to her. Maybe that's why she slept with the first guy that ordered her around. And now she expects me to be the same nice guy I was before ducking her boss. She is unbelievable." And wait, she also told me that she had quit her job. She told me that she couldn't stand being there and seeing his face. She said that she had it all with her, but managed to throw it all away because she thought she could rub one with the girls at work. She said she wasn't sure how it escalated to intercourse, although talking about her new ex-boss makes me sick. They couldn't get this thought out of my head. How is it that a guy that looks like Gollum can seduce a woman as attractive as my wife and get her to forget her? I pressed her about this. I asked her why she fell for him. She struggled and stuttered her way through answering the question. She said that she had been struggling with the same question as well, trying to understand how she fell for this guy, and kept coming back for more. She said it wasn't even that the act was. She said sarcastically that his story wasn't about his luck, but the only reason she could come up with as a combination of several things was that he was good with words and very eloquent. He always knew what to say and when to say it. It was almost like he had the answer to every question because of his position of authority. He played a role because the fact that all the girls looked up to him, tried to impress him, made him look more attractive. The 2 reasons she gave were kind of nuanced and seemed very thoughtful. But all that was going through my mind was how badly I would enjoy breaking up that party. This column is getting a lot of attention over there. I told my wayward wife that I had to expose him at this point. My wife said she would do anything to make me happy, even if we were getting divorced. She said she couldn't stand me being upset. I told her that I would expose Gollum to a spouse. I told my wife that although she was stupid to let this guy take advantage of her, he should be exposed, and I need to rain on his parade. He has destroyed my family. Now it's time for me to get revenge against him. My wife told me where he lives in his wife's name. I asked her how she was able to communicate with him without text, and she said that they were communicating through her work email message. I told my wayward wife that I wanted her to log into the work messenger and show me the messages. She hesitated and told me that it would not be a good idea because it would aggravate me more, and she is afraid that I may end her. She will show it to me. I pressed harder for it, but she said that since I had decided to proceed with the divorce, she would show it to me once it was finalized and we are separated. A few days later I was able to track down the wife of the golem. By the way, the golem was 51 years old and his wife was 48. I did a background check on him and found out where he lived. He has 4 children and the youngest is 12 years old. I made an extra copy of the video and put it on a thumb drive and went to Goblin's house. I knew he was still at work, probably ducking another one of his workers. I knocked on his door. His wife opened the door. I think she was the only one home. I told her my story and gave her the flash drive with the evidence and the letter that was sent to me anonymously. She said that she had received a similar letter and confronted her husband. But he denied it, accusing the women of being lazy and saying that they hated him because he forced them to do their jobs. He told his wife that because he was working so hard and making them do their job, they were looking for a way to destroy his life. She believed him and never thought about hiring a private investigator or suspected anything. The Golden's wife was very appreciative and I left her my number as well. She thanked me for my service to my country and we did. I'm not sure if they got a divorce or separated, but at least he knows that I am onto him. Okay, I submitted all of my evidence to the HR department last week and she spoke with a lady on the phone. She invited me to drop by, and I left another flash drive and a statement from my wayward wife stating that she had an affair with him, which was the reason she resigned from her job. I think this should be enough to get him fired from his job before I left the job site. I made sure to pay the goal. After that, I came out of the front lobby where the HR office is located. I went around the corner of the building to the docks area where the 18-wheelers are unloaded. It wasn't really a secure location. One of the side doors was unlocked, so I was able to slip into the building. I wasn't familiar with the building or where to find Gollum, but since I knew his name, I asked an employee, and she pointed me in the direction of his office. As I walked around the warehouse, I noticed that the majority of the workers there were females, even the forklift drivers. It was like this company had a policy of hiring only female employees. Although I saw males there, they were few and far between. I walked toward Golem's office before I could get to the office area of the distribution center. I saw him coming out of one of the offices. I was about 50 feet away from him. I called him by his name and he turned in my direction. He stared at me, trying to figure out who I was as I walked towards him. He may have thought I was a truck driver that came to drop off something. As I continued to get closer to him, I came very close to him, almost face to face. I hadn't said a word to him before right hook and dropped him with one punch. He was out cold as I calmly walked my way out of the warehouse. I was almost out of the warehouse before I opened the exit door. I looked back and noticed a small crowd forming around him as he was starting to stand up. I opened the door and walked out of the building. I'd heard a knock on my door after I came back from work yesterday. I opened the door and it was 2 police officers. They were there to question me about the offense that took place at my wife's former workplace. They believed that I offended God but didn't have any proof. Going by how they phrased the questions, I was just the suspect. They caught me on a security camera because the description wasn't clear enough. Maybe because I was wearing a long story short. Golem mentioned me as a suspect and wanted to press charges. I told the police that it wasn't me. They asked me if I had an alibi. I said yes. I was home with my wife. They asked if they could speak to my wife. I said sure. I called her and she lied to me. She didn't know I offended Gollum beforehand, but she quickly realized it and covered it. I'm not sure if they were satisfied with my answer because they took pictures of mine in my wayward wife's car, wrote down my number, and told me that they would be in touch if they have any more questions. I really screwed up on this one. It's hard to believe that this piece of work ducked my wife, and when I knocked him out, he called the cops on me to press charges against me. The balls on this guy are so big that he feels like he has a right to duck other people's wives and get away with it. Luckily for me, word spread fast. One of the women, he was told, had the courage to file sexual offense charges against him. Maybe she gained her courage because she heard that he was being investigated by HR and that the husband of the woman he had contact with came to his workplace and knocked him out as part of the process of investigation. HR brought in most of the women for questioning and they spilled the beans. He appears to have been pressuring most of his female employees are in love with him. Most of them refused, and the ones that did said they did it out of intimidation. Maybe it's true, maybe it's not, but you know how this kind of thing goes. It's like the Harvey Weinstein case where most of the women were willing to document in order to get ahead in their acting careers. But as soon as he got pinched, they all became victims. But luckily enough, I felt good about the outcome. I heard that he was terminated from his job. The next, I got some of this information from my wayward wife. She kept in touch with some people from work, so I don't know if the story is true or not. I also called his wife a few days later to check on her, and she told me that they are currently separated. She said he does not live with him anymore. She was the one that told me that multiple women had opened sexual offense cases against her. According to his wife, after confronting him with the evidence I provided to her, he confessed to her and admitted that my wayward wife was the only woman he had loved contact with. But it's hard to believe he's not lying to his wife. Otherwise, why are all these women bringing charges against him? As bad as it sounds, it would make me feel a little better if it was more than just my way of saying something. Although it would really stink if my wife was the only woman that willingly made love with him. And I'm still confused about what she got in return. What does that say about me? If my wife is that easy, it kind of makes me insecure that out of all those women, my wife was the only one that willingly did this column. I mean, how stupid was I to pick this woman as a wife in the first place? If she is willing to give it up that easily, that would mean that she is as easy as a hole. Which leads me to question if she's been faithful all those times that I have been in the military. I really feel devastated and depressed writing this right now, and I have been reading lots of surviving infidelity posts for encouragement to know that I am not alone. I spoke to my brother on the phone and he said that I may need to speak with a shrink because of my current mental state. The VA covers the expense of all kinds of doctor's visits, so it wouldn't hurt my pocket. But I am really hesitant and apprehensive about speaking with a stranger about my problems, even if it's a trained professional. But here I am sharing my story with a bunch of strangers online. It feels better posting online and getting advice from strangers, getting different opinions and reading comments and responses. I guess typing this story on this site is therapeutic. I am still living with my wayward wife and she stays in a separate bedroom. Her sister has been coming around more often and things seem to be getting back to normal. My wayward wife has been doing everything possible to make me happy. We haven't been intimate since D-Day and I still don't have any intention of being intimate with her. I have been dragging my feet on this divorce thing and I know that the more time I waste, the harder it is to get a divorce, because I'm starting to feel comfortable again with her taking the role as wife. I used to think that she was making her sister come to our house because she knew that I got along with her. But it seems like my sister-in-law is doing it of her own volition. She said she is considering moving closer to us since her kids are almost grown and her last child is about to get into college. She wanted to live closer to us. I have a lot of family around that area and it's close to my parents as well. My parents know that we are having problems with our marriage and they know that my wife had an affair, but they don't know the details. My wayward wife has always been fond of my parents and they love her like a daughter even though she was unfaithful. My parents still want us to work it out for the sake of the kids. A few weeks later, my sister-in-law accepted a new job close to us and moved into our area. Me and my wife are still living together, but sleeping in separate bedrooms. We are basically roommates now, but she continues to do all her wifely duties except for love. She proposed several times and I turned her down. It's hard to go so long without having sex, but I did it in the military and I know how to control myself. My sister-in-law has been coming by more often, and it seemed like she was more interested in hanging out with me than her sister, where the kids were. My wayward wife noticed it and put an end to it by confronting her. Although I didn't know about it, I found that out later. I only noticed that she wasn't coming by as often as she used to, and she wouldn't tell me why. My wayward wife is the jealous type, so I wasn't surprised. Maybe that was for a good reason, because I was starting to develop feelings. Despite the fact that I've always had a thing for her, I never acted on it, because I was married to her younger brother. I was debating whether to reconcile or divorce my wayward wife, but I am leaning more towards the divorce route. I struggled to accept reconciliation with her because I knew that I wouldn't be able to trust her again for a relationship to work. There has to be an element of trust. I cannot close my eyes and sleep in the same bed with someone that I cannot trust. She had an affair for 2 months and denied me love during that. That to me is unforgivable. My wife is convinced that there is a chance of reconciling, and I noticed that she had been making every effort she could to seduce me. She started walking around the house wearing a lace nightgown with no bottom and a bra. I know she is trying to love mommy. I know she is trying to seduce me. Unfortunately, she knew my weakness and it worked because we had love in the kitchen that night, and here is how it happened. I was trying to get something from the refrigerator or maybe a beer. Remember, I was walking by and noticed her back turned towards me as she was resting on the kitchen counter, cutting fruits for my kids to take to school tomorrow. She was wearing her lace robe, totally transparent, no bottom and no bra. I tried hard to look away, but I couldn't resist earlier. She had been walking around the house wearing just that, so she's already gotten me all hot and bothered. So as she was leaning on the counter with her back facing me, I went straight in her direction. I approached her. I grabbed her waist with my hands on both sides of her hip and pulled her behind toward me. Then I abruptly placed my hand behind her back and pushed her back forward. I lifted up her lace robe and that was it. It was probably the roughest I had ever been with her. To me it wasn't lovemaking like we were used to. It was pure animalistic to satisfy my pent-up desire. I noticed she came faster and her body responded better than I had ever felt before. I'm not sure if my mind was playing tricks on me, but the interesting thing was that I had never seen her react that way before. I have been in love with this woman for 10 years. For 10 years, we had been having a slow, romantic, normal closeness. Nothing close to being aggressive, nothing close to being rough. But till this moment, I had never seen her body react this way before. We only stopped because she was getting so loud and my kids were starting to hear her and come out of there. I was still in the fog when the kids interrupted us. I should have asked my wayward wife to follow me to the bedroom to finish up, but I didn't. I went into the bathroom and rubbed one. Well, unfortunately, last night I had a quickie with my wayward wife and I learned something about her that I didn't know. I now know that she loves it. A little rough and aggressive. This was news to me, and I felt lost because I thought I knew everything about her. I didn't have much experience with women before I met her and I have stayed loyal to her throughout our marriage. I felt like I had been married to a stranger during our regular matrimonial love. I allowed her to take the lead and I paid attention to what she said. I have read books on how to please a woman and almost all of them tell you to listen to her body. Even the late Bernie Mac had a skit about that. I felt like I had been having mainstream love throughout my marriage, which obviously wasn't what she may have always wanted. Yesterday night, I took control and did what I wanted, not caring about her desire. And surprisingly, she came faster and responded well to it. What bothers me most is wondering what else I don't know about yours. I started questioning myself. Maybe it was my fault that she cheated. I mean, if I had been more rough and assertive with her, maybe she wouldn't have cheated on me with the first guy that told her what to do. Maybe that is her thing. Maybe that is her fetish, and I failed to realize that till the end. I felt like all the books I had read about marriage were either lies or weren't applicable to her last night. It was almost like her body responded to my lead and the fact that I disconnected from her or what she wanted, which caused her to respond better than ever. Maybe she likes to be controlled. She wanted someone to tell her what to do and someone to order her around. I have always been told to be polite to my wife and be gentle. I must have read the same book on intercourse that my priest read. I'm starting to think that my wayward wife cheated on me because there are certain things I don't know about. I really wanted some advice on this, but I have nobody to ask these kinds of questions to outwardly. I am the muscle guy, aggressive, trained to end in the military. But when it comes to my wayward wife, Mr. Soft and gentle and letting her run the household even gave her control of our finances. And it is starting to become clear to me that I gave up my power in this marriage and even in the bedroom. And it is important I realize my failures because if I don't, I will continue to make this mistake in my future relationships. Although the quickie I had with my wayward wife was a mistake, it exposed the lot in our marriage. I now believe that is because I failed to assert authority in the relationship outdoors and behind closed doors. It seems like my wayward wife took the first chance she got to experience what it was like to be controlled. I kept thinking that this may not be her first chance. Some people on this side said that I should get tested for STDs and get a paternity test for my kids, which is my kids resemble me, so I hardly believe that they are not mine. I used to say that I was confident that my wife hadn't cheated on me while I was in the military, but not anymore. What these few weeks have taught me is that I don't know as much as I thought I did. I mean, if I hadn't gotten that letter about her infidelity, then she would still be ducking Gollum till this day. I always wonder if he was more aggressive, which is why she continued to return to him. So yesterday I went and got an STD test. I got the results the same day they came out clean. Also I took a paternity test. Most of you guys wanted me to. So I sent out saliva swabs of 3 of my kids for paternity testing, my wayward wife. I wasn't aware of this. The results will be available in 4 weeks. I am not too worried about the paternity test result because I feel like my kids are mine. The timeline of their conception coincides with when I was during my time in the military. She lived in base housing, provided for married, active personal updates. Some of you asked for an update, but there is nothing much to report here, so I am still considering moving forward with the divorce. My lawyer drafted the separation agreement, and it turns out that I will be paying her alimony. It wouldn't be any different from our current arrangement because I have always been paying her some allowance since she was staying at home. She hasn't been searching for work since. We are currently on speaking terms, but still sleeps in a separate bedroom. We are almost roommates at this point. We haven't had any intercourse since the strange encounter on the kitchen counter. She's been love bombing me, trying her best to seduce me again. But I've been avoiding her by coming home late, hanging out with friends after work, and even not coming home at all. She calls my cell phone to inquire about my whereabouts, but I don't answer. She told me that I was destined and I had already checked out. I should have gotten a divorce weeks ago, but I'm dragging my feet on the divorce because I don't like change. I don't know how to handle my stressful work with sharing custody of the kids. When we divorce, I will most likely seek 70% custody of the children. Don't get me wrong, I love my kids and I cherish every moment with them. My kids love to spend more time with me than with my wayward wife because I let them get away with anything. I always buy them presents. My kids spoil me a lot. While my wayward wife is the disciplinary, I often hide gifts. I bought it for my kids because I didn't want my wayward wife to see it. But eventually she found out that I am the breadwinner, and she is the homemaker, and that arrangement works for me. The police have not reached out to me yet concerning the offense. Hopefully it stays that way. I heard a civil case had been filed against Gull. I don't know if he is in jail or what happened to him. Apparently, before I showed up, none of these women thought it was a good idea to report this guy to the HR department for sexual offense or something to that extent. Maybe they felt like they wouldn't be heard. I don't know. I guess punching Gollum in the face and humiliating him gave them the courage to stand up against him. Yesterday, I received the paternity result, and all 3 kids are mine. It looks like I'm going to move forward with the divorce. I hired and paid the lawyer for my wayward wife. Like I said earlier in the post, I don't really have any problem supporting her financially. I told her beforehand that I would be serving her divorce papers and she cried. But she knows that there is no going back. Despite all the embarrassment and pain she caused me, I still wish her well, and I have no doubt that she will find someone else in no time because she is still a very attractive woman. But it is the end of the road for both of us. During our conversation, before serving her, we talked about her future and she said she would get a part-time teaching job to keep herself busy. We agreed that I would continue to pay her an allowance of $3,000 a month, including child support. So the money will be for her and my kids. I heard that it may be a bad idea not to go through the system, but I feel some kind of way having more government in my life. So we finally had the divorce agreement signed. In the presence of my lawyer and hers. It was an amicable divorce. I have no animosity against her. She clearly regrets what she has done and takes the blame for it. I have forgiven her for the sake of my kids, but I will never trust or take her. I recently found a nice 2-bedroom apartment in a good area of town. There are lots of beautiful women here. I never had the chance to play the field because my wife was the only woman I had ever been with. It's not as easy as it seemed to get the courage to ask a girl out on a date because I have never learned how to date. But I'm still a good-looking guy and women check me out sometimes, so I like my chances. One more thing. My sister-in-law has been coming to my apartment more often since I'm no longer living with my wayward mother. She is clearly attracted to me and we have been hanging out more. I don't know where this is going, but I'm not looking to date her. I think she knows as well. But we both enjoy each other's company. Enjoy each other's company. Enjoy each other's company. Enjoy each other's company. Then enjoy each other's